Hey everybody, I'm Jack with Future Pastimes, a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions, and we are reading Dune. We're down to the last 3 chapters of the novel. In this chapter, Paul is up in some rocks with Gurney and Stilgar. Other Fremen are nearby, and they are looking down into the Imperial Basin. The Emperor's ship has arrived on Arrakis, and it has unfurled a structure, sort of like a metal tent that's several levels high. It's quite large. It can hold 5 legions of Sardaukar, as well as the Emperor and his retinue. So Paul and the others are looking at this, and there is a great-great-grandmother of a storm that is bearing down on the Imperial Basin. Now, the shield wall protects the Imperial Basin and the 2 cities that are adjacent to it, Arrakeen and Carthag, from the storm, as long as the shield wall is intact. But what we learn in this chapter is that Paul has acquired his family's atomics that were secreted away on Arrakis, and he is going to blow up the shield wall as the storm comes in, and the storm will render the shields on all of their ships and the structure ineffective. And he's planning an attack to take out their air power and to strike at the Emperor and get things rolling on his sweet revenge. They have released Captain Aramsham and the other Sardaukar that they had captured earlier, and with the message that Paul Atreides is alive and is the proper ruler of Arrakis. And they're tracking the progress of the Sardaukar. When they get there, they notice that there's a little flag ceremony that goes on, and they're curious about which flag they're going to put up. Are they going to put up the Atreides flag, which means that the Emperor recognizes Paul's authority? Will they put up the Harkonnen flag, which means that he's formally declaring against House Atreides? But what happens is he puts up the CHOAM flag. And again, the CHOAM is sort of like OPEC meets Amazon, meets the East India Company. It's all of these things wrapped into one. And with the CHOAM flag going up, he is signaling to the Landsraad, which is still mostly up in orbit around Arrakis, that he's in it for the spice, and he doesn't really care what happens to House Atreides. And Paul is not necessarily surprised by this. And Stilgar is like, I don't understand all of this off-worlder politics, but Gurney certainly does. So Paul proceeds with the plan. They've got some Fedaykin and other Fremen that are ready to strike, and he has Gurney set off the family atomics, and they're getting ready to move in with the rest of the plan. But the chapter ends with a message. They're receiving radio chatter, and they're able to piece together some parts of a message that there was a sneak attack on one of the southern sieges. Alia has been captured, and then some message about Paul's son, which the others try to assure him it's garbled, we're not sure, but Paul then, he suddenly knows, because again, he's experiencing some of the now as a remnant of changing the water of life and starting to open up his Kwisatz Haderach awareness. And he knows that the son that he and Chani have had has been killed in the attack. But there's nothing he can do about that now. So that's where it ends, with everything is going Paul's way. He's up in the rocks, and Stilgar and Gurney are like, we shouldn't be out here so easy to see. But Paul is like, we're perfectly safe. They're not paying any attention to us, and they wouldn't bother attacking 3 people up in the rocks anyway. And maybe part of this is because they were in the process of doing an attack. But yeah, everything, Paul was very confident of the plan. Everything was clicking into place. But this was one thing he didn't account for. And it's interesting that in all of his awareness, he hadn't really seen that. So it's still some limitations to his prescient visions, to his ability to harness these insights, and part of it's probably because it's brand new to him. But the other thing is that there is sort of this weird nexus going on, and he mentions it earlier, where he's not able to see into the future, and neither is the guild. The guild have a limited form of prescience, which they use with their navigators to be able to safely navigate the highliners that travel from planet to planet throughout the Imperium. But they were experiencing this limitation, and a lot of it has to do with you can't see the future if it's that uncertain, and there's a lot of question marks right now centered around Paul's ability to destroy the spice and his attack on the emperor and the outcome there. So there's nothing is certain. There's a lot of blank spaces in the future paths that they are foreseeing. So some of this is why Paul didn't know that the attack was going to happen on the siege and the death of his son. So it's interesting, and I would love to have interviewed Frank Herbert to talk more about this. What was really going on? What were his thoughts? What was he trying to convey with this? Would be really interesting to pick his brain. But that is not possible, and I'm not sure he left enough notes behind for Brian or anyone else to be able to get into these kinds of specifics. But it's a really interesting chapter. It's very cool. We know that some portions of this have been adapted in the new Villeneuve movie. We certainly have seen Paul looking into Imperial Basin. We've seen the Emperor's ship there with the structure. It's clear that that's what that is, and the atomics going off. They've depicted it in a couple of ways. One, the first time we saw that, it seemed like that was happening. But in the third trailer that they released, it was like it was a vision, and it even has like a weird somebody's making the explosion sound themselves. It's a really interesting touch. As far as the attack on Paul's son, that is a big question mark. We don't know. In the Lynch movie, that was not adapted. They did have the atomics. We've got the great scene where they throw on their radioactive suits, and Paul yells, Paul tells Gurney, and Gurney yells, "Atomics!" And then that scene is in the miniseries, and they do have the attack, which results in the capture of Alia and the death of Leto II. So, yeah, I'm anxiously waiting to see. We're now down, as of this recording, we're 50-ish days away from the release. I myself am going to see Dune Part 1 in IMAX next week. Or I guess it's this week. Whenever this posts, it'll be around then. So I hadn't seen it in IMAX, so I saw it in the theaters a couple of times, and I've seen it at home many times. But, it was filmed for IMAX, so the top and bottom part is lost for most people watching it not in IMAX. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Let me know your thoughts on this chapter and any of the other related elements in terms of adaptations. And we have 2 chapters to go after this. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.